But I guess if Jack had been out of the pictures, I had to start the search.
You would have panicked a little?
I might have panicked because there was no one that I had met that was waiting in the wings or anything.
Right.
Like Mary had two nice guys propose to her before she went in the convent. Both would have made, I mean, I know them both, they both would have made very nice husbands, you know.
Really?
But I had nobody like that.
Right.
There wasn't anybody that would have, you know, so it was just meant to be.
Right.
Meant to be.
So where was your first home with Jack?
Our first home, well, Jack was by then working for DuPont, and he spent we lived the first, he was probably working for them 3 or 4 years before that. The first 8 years of our married life and 4 children, we lived in Philadelphia. And he was doing very well. He got up to be manager of the lab where he started, and then one day he came home and said we were moving to Flint, Michigan. It was a smaller lab, and Flint, Michigan was with the boondocks.
Why? Why was that a
And I just stood at the kitchen sink and cried.
Oh, really?
But I mean, he said, well, we don't have to go. I said, yeah, it's just like you can cut off, you know, you can cut off your arm. But, you know, we were going.
So even though it was a smaller lab, it was considered a promotion?
Yeah, because it was giving him exposure to the automotive industry. This plant did you know, that's Flint, Michigan only existed for the automotive industry, and it was a tough move, and he picked out the house the only time, and I hated it.
So how many moves did you have altogether with Jack's career?
Well, we moved to Flint, and we were there a year and a half, then we were a year and a half in suburban Detroit in a house that I loved, and met nice friends and nice neighbors, and liked that a lot. Then we got back to Wilmington, and Jack hated his job there, and we had a lovely home, but I was very busy. But
because you had 4 children at that point.
And that's where Chris was born, and that was as I tell Brian, you know, Brian always said to me, you know, did you use birth control? And I said, well, Brian, if I had, you would be the one child that wouldn't be here because poor Kevin was barely a baby. And then Chris was the only one that you could really say was really planned. I mean, I wanted one more child, and many others just happened.
Really?
You know, I mean, we're lucky. I guess they weren't Irish twins. But at that, I did have one miscarriage.
Right. In between?
In between Brian and Chris.
And how far along were you?
Just probably 3 months, and I was all right till the nurse told me it was a boy, and then I just was. Then it hit home.
Right.
But you know, thank God it was meant to be. And then when Chris was coming, we wanted it to be a girl because we had all these boys, but that would have been disaster. I mean, it was just much better because those 3 boys just idolized him.
Like having a little brother?
Oh, yeah, and, you know, he was going to be everything that they couldn't be, and, you know, and they were good to you.
So looking back over the period of raising your children, what would you say was the best period, the most ideal?
When they were little. The hardest part was when they were in high school, and when you feel kind of superfluous at times when they get to be older and smarter and don't need you anymore. And also when they're striving for their own independence and you have more conflicts, you know. The mother-daughter thing with Mary Ellen and then Kevin. Never seemed to have much trouble with Larry or Brian or Chris, but Kevin was a little wild. We had a few adventures with him. And that was the hardest. And then when they go to college, it's like a sense, you know, I've done my best. What happens now is up to them.
Right.
Not that you still don't worry. But it's when they're in high school and they're right there, but they're still trying to do their own thing and be independent and all that, you know.
And that's when you were living in Connecticut?
Yeah, that's when we were living in Connecticut.
Except for Chris.
And when Kevin had his party, and he swore, and Chris and Brian never, to this day, have talked about that party. Kevin must have said to them, I will kill you if you tell them about the party. And all we had to do was walk in the house, and it smelled like a brewery.
And did you find out
and the floor was such a mess down in the play area.
Did he get in trouble for it?
I was mad at him for at least 3 months. I don't think he cared, but I was. And then I was at a track meet over at Prep one time, and I told one of the priests, we were talking about the boys, and I said, well, the only bad thing he ever really did, he gave this party, and he said, I was there, it was a doll.
It wasn't even a
He said, I left. So anyway, we got over that.
Did you ever, you're saying you're bummed out when you moved to Flint. With all the moves, was there some point you just said, geez, when is this going to end? When can I settle down and make friends in an area? Or
No,
you ever feel
the first move was hard. The first move was hard because we started out and we were the first, or one of the first of all these bachelors, came out of the service, all these young men, and joined DuPont at the same time. And they were a whole bunch of guys who had a wonderful time together. They business and social, and then they each gradually got married, and these were our good friends. And this was for 8 years. And then we went to Flint, and we didn't know a living, I didn't know a soul. And we were only there a short time, and we did see company people, but it was never like the friends those first friends that we had, some of whom we still keep in touch with. And they had children when we did, like the Grunwalds and the Noons and all that. And then the Michigan, that year and a half, I had one woman friend particularly, Eleanor Wilson, who I was very fond of, and I liked living there. The school, I liked the school, and I liked the house. But we were only there a year and a half, and then we went back to Wilmington, and that was okay. And I liked the Connecticut part, but I didn't like Remington.
Really?
I don't like guns.
Yeah.
And that was very tough.
How many?
The fact that there was a hunting, that I would understand. But if you went away with all these people, or you went out socially, or you went to the conventions, you'd be sitting right next to the man at dinner, being all friendly with him, and he's one of the people that are making handguns. See? And I could never say a word about that, and I never did until I was long gone from there. But it preyed on my mind a lot.
How long was Jack?
We were there 16 years.
Wow.
And most of it he liked. Toward the end, he if they hadn't sent him to Wilmington, I think he would have, he thought about going to work for the government, but that, with his personality, I don't think that would have worked anyway. But luckily, we got sent to Wilmington at just the time that Chris was going to college. It was perfect, because then I didn't go through that withdrawal in that big house without anybody. That last couple of years when I really enjoyed it, because Chris was like an only child. Jack traveled a lot, but it was very nice for me. Chris and I used to have many a dinner together. It was nice. It was nice. And I still had the connection at Prep. And Chris had nice friends.
Right.
That was nice.
So looking back over all the homes you had, which would you say was your favorite?
The favorite house was the one that we lived in Delaware from 82 to 86 when Chris was there, and he brought David home 2 or 3 times at least. And we enjoyed that. We'd go out to this one restaurant and discuss politics in a mild way.
Chris actually mentioned those discussions on the drive up when we were talking about the questions, and he said he remembers you saying during one of those dinners.
Well, I think it was 84. It was probably, we were talking about the presidential election in Mondale. Maybe he said something critical of Reagan, so David said, I think if I vote for Mondale, you leaned over and said, David, I could never vote for a Democrat. He always reminded me of that.
And the only one that I could vote for to this day is Sam Nunn. I kind of like Sam Nunn.
And where did
too
that
strong on that anti-gay thing, but on a lot of things I like him. I wish he were a Republican.
Where did the strong Republican background come from?
FDR.
My family.
Really?
Yeah, my family. My father voted for Roosevelt the first time, and then and the same as Jack's father. Then after that, then they began to hate him, and you just heard that
over and over.
Yeah.
And so you never have voted Democrat?
Never, and I couldn't because, like even Sam Nunn, I think the things I like about him, but how can he go along with their welfare program? See, I think, as I said to Chris today or yesterday, welfare is the worst thing that ever happened to this country. In some way, we could have taken care of these people in another way. But that's basically my strong Republican background. And I think during the war they were isolationists at first, but then they, naturally, everyone, once we got into that war, it was a big thing.
Okay, we're halfway through, so I want to do a tape. Okay.
But I don't think I minded the moves as much as some people would think. I'm not antisocial, but I mean, the family's always been the most things. And then when you're with a big company like that, it isn't like you're moving into a vacuum. You will have some social life right away because of the company. And so that it was never, the tragedy. And I never wished I was back in Cincinnati. Got to see the family enough.
Why? I mean, I guess the easy answer is Dad, but I mean, the rest of your family did stay in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's anything about your personality that, I mean, like you say, you're glad you weren't back there. Why you? Why nobody else in your family that moved away? I mean, it's just who they married?
It's who they married.
Who they married.
I think they would have moved. It just never wasn't an issue, The people were there, and it wasn't that they. No, I think it was just who they married. Yeah. And their business, because the pharmacy and Ken Sherman with his own business, they weren't with big companies that were going to transfer them anywhere.
Right.
But no, the moves weren't that hard.
So once you finally had an empty nest, how did you adjust after raising 5 children?
Very well, because we moved to Wilmington, and I had this lovely home, and it was on the East Coast, and I could, Mary Ellen, had the baby. You can't believe all the time I spent with Matthew, because she was still working, and Jack traveled. I could go up and take care of him. I could go up and, when Brian was at Harvard, Chris, and the one trip that was that I did when Chris was sick, and I drove up there and back in one day. That's 7 hours each way. And I walked into that room, and it was like World War I. It smelled like gangrene must smell like. It's a wonder that. And he wasn't even going to, you see, I was going to come up and get him, bring him home for Christmas. But he was sick, and I should have come up sooner. And he didn't ask me to come sooner. And he was in that room like he was dying. And all the way home, all he did was cough and blow into Kleenex like he was a consumptive. I mean, he had mono. And that room, I mean, I'm surprised they all didn't die when they went back if it wasn't thoroughly disinfected. It just was unbelievable. And he was such, I mean, he wouldn't, he should have called us a couple of days earlier and said, I'm sick, but he was he's a good soldier, And then we brought him home and put him to bed and gave him soup and everything, and he was well in no time.
Yeah, straight away.
It really was. That's the sickest you've ever been, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was really sick. I bet a few more days he would have been in the hospital with pneumonia, maybe even one day. I don't know if we took you to the doctor then, or you just got better. I think you just got better all by yourself.
Yeah.
But he was so sick. He was so sick. But anyway, that was a very nice place to live because you're on the East Coast. Like you said, you can go anywhere. That's the one good thing about living on the East Coast.
Right.
And when you have friends and family, we saw friends from Connecticut. We'd go up to New York. It's accessible.
Right.
And Jack loved his job and was a big important person when we came back there then. And I love that area. Like I told you, someday I want to take you there.
Yeah, we definitely.
And it was just very, very nice. And then it was a big surprise to move to Detroit, but by then I didn't care. I was free and easy, ready to go where he was, and this was the last big challenge for him. He was all excited about it, and that worked out beautifully. By then we knew we'd be coming out here. So only that first move was really, really tough.
When you cried at the kitchen sink?
Yeah.
So it was the early 70s when you pretty much decided that you'd retire out here, right?
Yeah, we bought the land in 72. When he was with Remington, we used to come out here in February to convention. And we lived in Connecticut, and Connecticut in February is not very nice, and we come out here, and it was just like today, only a little bit colder.
Right.
And you think, oh, gorgeous, you know. And I loved California. And that time I was 8 years old, my first trip. I just loved, you know, you live near the Ohio River, which used to flood occasionally, that brown, muddy river, and you come out here and see the ocean. You know, I thought, this is...
So that's when you developed your love of the ocean?
That's when I developed my
when you were
8 years old.
Wow.
And at that time, they didn't have the bridge across the bay, and you had to go across in ferry. And the other thing was that I'll never forget, you know, Cincinnati, you didn't have air conditioning in those days, and Cincinnati is like Washington, hot and humid. Came out here, and my Aunt Irene wore a fur coat in July in San Francisco, and I thought, this is for me. This is for me.
So looking back over all your years of motherhood, what would you say are the best parts and the worst part of being a mother?
The best part is just the joy of having them and having the children, seeing them grow. And then when they are adults, we have been very blessed. Our 5 have, you know, I thank God every day because they turned out well, and we have good marriages, except for one, and that may work itself out. And beautiful, healthy, blessing of all, 9 healthy grandchildren. I would say the toughest part, and it'll hit you too, is that being a mother, and maybe it's partly my personality. Bob Roth's name for me is Dark Cloud. Despite my, you know, strong faith, and my faith is extremely strong, I am a worrier, and you never stop worrying. I mean, my children will be 60, and I'll still be worrying about them. And that is the toughest part, and you can't, a mother can't get over that. I think a man, his love is a little bit different, but there's not as much worry to it.
Yeah.
I mean, like Jack says, he never prays for something special to happen for the children. He prays, and it's kind of a nice, he prays they'll find their way. And he can say that probably and then put it out of his mind. Never out of my mind. Always one aspect of some child or some event or something is always with me. And that's hard.
Right.
It would be nice if you could just put it out there
Relax.
a little bit. Yeah, relax, because on the whole, things that we've been extremely blessed. There's no doubt about it. We have been blessed.
So you were saying that your faith is very strong. How do you think Catholicism has really influenced your life? And
Oh, tremendously. I mean, it's part of what I am. Not that I'm all that I should be, and most of mine is lacking in. I have the love of God. Love a neighbor is sometimes lacking, but I try. And there's certain. It's been hard in the way that the faith has changed, and that you can no longer feel that you agree with every single aspect of things. Because when you grow up, you just assume you're going to believe in everything. But that doesn't bother me to the extent that I think I'm wrong. I think God's just going to judge on that. And also, it would be nice if, it's important. It's very important, but it's also consoling. I can't imagine with being the warrior that I am and not having that faith, I'd really be in trouble, you know.
Did you ever have any period in your life, however fleeting, where you questioned being a Catholic or the intensity of being Catholic? Or
No, I never doubted. As I say, there's some things about, to this day, you know, that I strongly disagree with. And
in the faith?
Yeah, well, things that this Pope talks about that I don't agree on everything.
Such as?
Contraception.
I believe that it should be allowed?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that evolves over your life because, I mean, growing up, or early on, it was something that wasn't considered, and didn't even, you know, as I say, abstinence when we were childbearing age. But now there's more than that, and I'm a firm believer that if God made two people to love each other, and you have a happy marriage, and that you have children, if He gives and blesses you with children, but there's nothing wrong with you deciding
that you have as much as you can handle.
I mean, like, some of these, you talk about these poor people in Mexico, or the Peru.